Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be doing my very first iceberg, and I thought for the 10K special of this channel, I am going to start with the Doomsday Iceberg, going through different types of apocalypses people either think are going to happen, people thought were going to happen, or some that I just think I need to be talked about. I found this one on Reddit, and honestly, when I posted this on the community tab, you guys were really looking forward to it. And I tried doing this all in one video, but I thought against it purely because I would just be speed running every single one of these if I wanted to get it done in under an hour. So I thought I'm going to be doing part one of a possibly 3-part video, and then when I'm done, I'm just going to edit all together. I just want to get out of content for you because I'm already behind on specials. So, I just thought, let's get a head start on this one. And before we begin, I just want to say thank you guys for your support. It's absolutely insane that we went from 400 to 10,000 in really, like, 5 weeks. Like, it was 5 weeks from 400 subscribers to 10,000. I never thought that was possible. And I just wanted to say thank you guys. And here is a 10K special for you. And with that out of the way, let's cover the first tier of the iceberg of Doomsdays. Climate change. Now, climate change doesn't even hit the iceberg of apocalypses. However, this does play a pretty large role in a bunch of other Doomsdays that I'm going to be talking about. So I thought this would be a pretty good one to lay down some groundwork. Climate change. I mean, like, you're going to have more storms. You're going to have more flooding. This is more of like the set-off point of all the other apocalypses that could be happening. And I understand why this one isn't ranked very high. It's a very well-known one. I mean, like, have you ever been able to make it a week without hearing the phrase climate change? Like, it's gonna happen. It's already happening. People have been talking about it ever since the 1990s with Al Gore. But back then it was called global warming. And then they found out it actually gets colder in some areas. So they called it climate change, which it's still going on. And we're affecting it. But it's also an inevitability. There's absolutely no way that it's going to go to a complete stop purely because the Earth kind of runs on a cyclical cycle. And I'm not even trying to sound like conspiracy at all. We literally run on a cycle. We've had multiple different ice ages. Like, it was hotter with the dinosaurs than it is now. Like, we are going to be running on a cyclical cycle. However, there is evidence that we are speeding up that cycle. Now, this is going to be a good set-off point for a few other Doomsdays. That's why I'm going to start with this one, and a few of the other ones are going to help with it. Overpopulation. In any ecosystem, especially when we're talking about, like, humans, there is a carrying capacity of the ecosystem that we are in. Overpopulation deals that we're going to have too many people for the Earth to carry. I believe that number off the top of my head because people have different theories on what that number is. I believe the maximum I've ever heard is about 100 billion. We're currently sitting at, we're riding up on 10 billion, okay? Let's just say cool 10 billion, okay? We got 90 billion more to go. However, where this, I believe, is going to be a good, be a good start of other apocalypses is way before we get to 100 billion people. There are going to be resource wars, and I think the resource wars are far more likely to end the human race than us literally running out of food. Like, overpopulation is a good start-off point of an apocalypse. However, I don't think there's a scenario where we get 100 billion people and we don't start a war before that. Dog, if you had to live in, like, favelas over the entire world, you're telling me nobody would start a war before that? Dog, people would go to war over losing a farm. 100% they're going to start a war off basically living in a 10 by 10 room for the rest of their life. And you have, like, 1,000 neighbors. 100% a war starting before that. And as far as, like, overpopulation, I think it's more likely World War III starts, that cools down the population, and we no longer have to worry about it, which is kind of good, but, like, also really bad. Asteroid Impact. Now, this one is just super widely known. Like, we're not at the depths at all. Like, this is just a super widely known one. Dinosaurs were taken out by an asteroid. It is kind of scary if you think about it for too long. We are basically a little blue marble going through the cosmos at over 100,000 miles per hour with a bunch of rocks that could easily take us out are basically, like, in the universe scale, okay? If we're talking about the entire scale of the universe, are, like, less than the width of a hair away from us. Like, that is how, like, close to universal death we are. Like, if you think about it for too long, I can understand why people, like, will get anxiety about that. The way I view it is like, yeah, I mean, it's an inevitable, I guess, but at the same time, like, it's like, if you're going to be scared of getting hit by a meteorite at any given moment, then you should never be riding in a car, because I think the odds of you dying in a car accident are far more than a meteorite coming out of nowhere and taking us out. And, like, let's be real here, though. Would it suck? Kind of. Like, bro, you get hit by a meteorite, and then it's just death globally. Like, nobody's getting out of it. Nobody's making a moon base. Nobody's gonna go to Mars to live. Like, it's global death, and I bet it would look really cool right before it happened, okay? So, I understand why this one's pretty high up. A plague. There's another name for this one, but I'm pretty sure it will get me flagged if I say it. A global plague. This one, I've already talked about this in the real life apocalypse tier list. This one's the most depressing. There's just something about, like, I would rather take a supervolcano and die in the initial eruption, a meteorite impact that just kills everybody, than there's a plague that everybody just dies slowly. Okay, like, and this could be, like, this one's also scary because of how likely it is. I mean, dog, we have viruses that are now Somebody corrected me on the last one. There's bacteria that are growing a resistance to antibiotics. And if you don't know, the whole reason that we were able to beat the Black Death, the bubonic plague, is because we found out how to make penicillin. Penicillin is a form of an antibiotic. We kind of tripped over ourselves and found a way to survive the bubonic plague. And the bubonic plague killed... It was like 2/3 of Europe, 1/3 of Europe. Like, it was a crazy amount of people died in the bubonic plague. Like some Thanos snap level bullshit. If that happened on a global level, like, the fact is it is not outside the realm of possibility at all that we just all get globally destroyed with a plague. And this could be anything. I've heard everything from, like, a prion disease would absolutely destroy us. Antibiotic-resistant bacteria, a virus coming from like a meteorite. That's also like a kind of a fear right now. That is definitely one where it's the most depressing, and I can understand why people would be scared of that one. And we got our own little taste of it. But, like, imagine that, but, like, 99% of people died. Yeah, we're fucked, bro. Zombie apocalypse. This one's admittedly a fun one, and I think most people... they know about a zombie apocalypse. As far as ways that this could go down, the most plausible one I've ever heard is that there was a mutated gene of, like, the rabies virus. Or, like, scary enough, The Last of Us has, like, a kind of plausible one. And that is, the mushroom that controls ants that's able to make the crossover to humans because of, like, a climate change event that raises the temperature overall. Like, you see why climate change kind of had to play in to set the stage for a bunch of these other ones? But here's my problems with the zombie apocalypse, though. Unless it's some World War Z shit, I really do believe it wouldn't be super damaging. What I mean by super damaging, I don't think the entirety of humanity would be wiped out. I think it would cull, like, a solid 50% at most of, like, the population. Maybe it's just American pride, but, like, I've been desensitized to, like, zombie stuff purely because I'm like, bro, we get the day off and we get to use our weapons? Like, dog, like, that sounds kind of dope. But, yeah, zombie apocalypse, I guess. Y2K. Y2K is one of the two reasons I don't trust the opinions of old people. Let me tell you the other one. I was working at Walmart and I was loading an old lady's car full of moles. And then she asked me how much I made. I told her I made $14 an hour. Not a terrible wage, but at the same time, not great. And she said, "Oh, that's really good. You might be able to afford college and buy a home." I legitimately couldn't tell if she was trolling. And then I looked into it, and these old people were buying fucking houses for less than $30,000 a year. Brother, we're fucked. That's actually another one on here, but we'll cover that later on. But, yeah, no, to throw it back to Y2K. Y2K is another reason I don't trust the opinions of old people beyond a certain point. Because they legitimately thought the world was going to end because their computers couldn't, do the year 2000. So to give you an idea, like, this is a level of procrastination that is honestly inspiring. So back in the day when we were first getting into computing, they made computers, and one of the things that they put into it was like a date and time, obviously, right? But they only ever programmed it to go all the way up to 1999, December 31st. They never thought about putting in the year 2000, and it was such a bad, the calendar was such an integral part of the computer that if the calendar in theory stopped working, it would cause a cascading event that would destroy all computers. That's what they thought. Dude, I had to look through old Y2K newspaper clippings, okay? And they legitimately thought the entirety of the US was going to fall into a fucking dark ages because all computers would fail. You want to know what actually happened? All the calendars were stuck on December 31st, 1999. That's literally all that happened. Okay? They want to talk some shit over oh man, these Gen Zers just don't know what's going on right now. They're gizmos and gallywacks. Bitch, you thought the world was going to end because of the year 2000. I don't want to hear your opinion on anything that has a technology level above a fucking calculator. Get out of here. Nuclear war. This one, again, is probably one of the more likely. We just are now getting to the tip of the iceberg because these are ones that are just beneath, common knowledge. Nuclear war. We are actually pretty close. When I say that, okay, we're not the closest we'd ever been. Definitely the closest the world has ever been in nuclear war was the Cuban Missile Crisis. Or another story that I heard, there was once so during the Cold War, right, when the US and Soviet Union were at each other's throats, there was a lot of beef going there. I'll cover that in another video. There was a lot of beef between the Soviet Union and the US. And the Soviet Union had a dead man switch. What the dead man switch is that when a nuclear missile crossed into their airspace, there's going to be alarms that went off, and it was going to prime their entire nuclear arsenal. And all somebody had to do was say that they wanted to launch it, or if enough time passed, they were just going to launch the nukes no matter what. So if everybody died, nukes were going to launch, I believe it was 1 week afterwards. There was one dude that was watching the nuclear airspace sensors, right? And they went off. This man looked into the airspace and said, yeah, nah, it's broken, bro. That's not a nuke. One dude, okay, stopped the entire world from going into nuclear war. Legitimately look this up. It's such an insane story because he just, they're not launching a nuke. Obviously, bro, it's just a broken sensor. Yes, it was a broken sensor. Bro, all dude had to do was press a button, the world would have ended. Now we're looking at, possibly a World War III, but, again, maybe I'm just an American, brother. Every single year, ever since 2012, I've been hearing the world is supposed to end. At this point, I still have to go to work. So, are we ending on Monday or Tuesday? You tell me. Do I need to wake up early or not? I'm not desensitized to World War III at this point. Yes, I'm aware that it's probably going to end the entirety of humanity, and I don't want it to happen. But, don't tease me with it. Don't edge me with the ending of civilization if nothing's gonna happen and I still gotta pay taxes. Yeah, no, let's skip that. Flooding. I'm gonna be real. I got this one off of Reddit, and I thought the flooding one was such a dumb one, because, are we talking a Noah's Flood level cataclysm? Really? That's how okay, I'll play into it a little bit. Let's say a climate change event happened, and the entirety of the polar ice caps melted, and all the water from the polar ice caps went down and flooded. We would lose the entirety of the East Coast and Florida. Okay? And I saw something that we would lose, 40% of Michigan, which is where I'm from. Michigan boys, let's go. It would suck. I'm not saying that it wouldn't, okay? But, We wouldn't all die though. Granted, food would be would it really be? Yeah, food. Let's say food is assorted. Okay, let's say all the worst possible things could happen. Okay, we're flooded. This is our new way of life, bro. Beachfront property. I guess that's gonna come back even stronger than before. Like, maybe again, I'm just desensitized to it. How many times I gotta hear about losing out on beachfront property, stuff that I can't even afford? But people are still going to buy it. Like, that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm not saying it wouldn't be bad. But at the same time, like, I'm starting to get desensitized to the fear. I really am. Supervolcano eruption. We've already talked about Mount Yellowstone on this channel. And some people are like, oh, well, Mount Yellowstone's a myth. No, it's not. Mount Yellowstone is a real thing. What we're arguing is whether Mount Yellowstone is going to erupt anytime soon. And from the digging that I've done, we have around like 150 to 200 years of prep time. And interesting enough, so scientists actually can't find out exactly when the supervolcano will erupt, but we get 10 years of prep time when they think it's going to erupt. They have like a 10-year like a warm-up period, like a countdown, and then it's going to erupt. They were able to do it with the volcano in Iceland a while back. That's how they know they can do this. But that was a small volcano compared to Mount Yellowstone. Mount Yellowstone, if it were to ever erupt, would be such a devastating event. It would probably plunge the entirety of America into a pseudo-dark age. Not just because of the initial supervolcano eruption, but something that we're going to be covering, volcanic winter. I want to save that for later, but understand there's the supervolcano eruption, and then there's volcanic winter. The eruption itself would kill about, I believe it was like 40%. Like, the dead zone of the initial eruption, okay, I believe is around 100 miles. The affected zone is 700 miles. Listen, people are like making fun of me for saying this a lot, but I'll say it for this one. Brother, we would be so astronomically cooked if Mount Yellowstone ever came out. That's my one cooked for the video. Pollution. Listen, pollution is a good start-off point for a lot of other apocalypses that we're going to get to later on in the iceberg. However, it's actually way worse than you think it is. I mean, like, let's first start off with the depressing reality of pollution. There are fucking islands in the ocean that are made of trash. And, like, I'm gonna say a few things that, taken out of context, could get me canceled. However, let me first preface with this. Take care of the environment, do not litter, do not be a gross piece of shit, recycle as much as you possibly can, and hey, maybe you don't need another pair of Nikes, you have 17 of them in your closet, okay? You don't need that many shoes! But, recycling is one of the most effective scams in the history of the private industry. Let me explain something to you. The whole reason that recycling is as big as it is because these massive companies were able to argue in a fucking court that the individual is responsible for taking care of the trash of these multi-billion-dollar organizations. Okay? They would rather you, like, recycle your pop cans so they can use them continuously and it cuts down on cost for them, which they're then going to pour more toxic waste into the fucking ocean. Like, we were effectively scammed. Like at an individual level, you have almost no impact. Both badly and good. Like, I understand, like, there's a lot of, like, bike here, don't drive there. Like, that's all well and good, okay? Like, you can keep, like a CO2 meter on your car and then not drive every Wednesday. Meanwhile, Taylor Swift is gonna take her third fucking drive in her private jet to Starbucks and visit Travis Kelce. Like, you do absolutely nothing compared to the top 1%. That's what makes pollution so depressing, because you ultimately have no say in it. And all the stuff that, like, does cause the pollution is so detrimental to how you live your life and what you need that you have to be a knowing participant, which is so depressing, dude. A Mayan Prophecy. So this calls back all the way to 2012. 2012 was a fever dream, bro. There are people still today that believe the world ended and we're in another multiverse, which pulls into another afterlife theory that I covered in a tier list a while back. But the Mayan Prophecy said that the world was going to end in 2012. That's how they got it. Which, let me just say this. Do I believe that, like, old civilizations were smarter than they think we were? Yes. I think we have this weird idea that everybody was just a fucking moron back in the day. I don't think they were all morons, but I don't think they were more advanced than we were. You really think some Mayans who were just sacrificing people to, like, the sun god, you think they had an idea that the world was going to end in 2012? No. What really happened is they ran out of room in the Mayan calendar. Okay? The Mayan calendar, the reason people were so, they liked the Mayan calendar is because it was far more advanced than any other calendar that was ever made outside of, like, the Catholic calendar, which we still use to this day. Yeah, the Mayan calendar was super accurate, but they ran out of space on the calendar, so the last date that they had was 2012. Yes, the Mayan prophecy for 2012 is basically the natives' version of Y2K. I am not kidding. That is what the Mayan prophecy was. Alien invasion. I've already talked about it. Not to get, kind of philosophical here. I've brought this up before, but I'm gonna bring it up again. Aliens wouldn't have to beat us in a 1v1, bro. All they would have to do is promise people free housing, free food, free water, and entertainment. They wouldn't even have to fight us, okay? I understand, we have this idea, from movies that we can 1v1, like aliens that are so advanced that they were able to travel faster than the speed of light. I'm in all practicality, probably not. If aliens were really visiting us, well, there's one of two things. If they were evil aliens, I think they either are already controlling us and we don't realize it, or two, they kind of look at us the same way that we look at ants. Not to quote the Joe Rogan experience, but I understand Joe Rogan's not the smartest guy, but he made a really good point. If we came across some ants that learned how to start fire, we would be watching them like a fucking hawk. If we watched ants that created weapons and had versions of government and then figured out how to create a nuclear bomb, okay? We would be watching them like a hawk. Could we wipe them out at any moment? Yes, because again, we're humans, they're ants. That's actually a really good explanation between aliens and humans if aliens are actually around us watching us. And they're more looking at us bro, these monkeys created a nuclear bomb before they created anti-grav tech. What the fuck's going on? That's the whole alien thing. If aliens did invade us, bro, we were probably going to get no-diffed. Ice Age. Yeah, it's an ice age. If the entire world was plunged into an ice age, bro, we're pretty dead, okay? I understand, people, have this idea of, massive heat or, massive cold. I think it's been proven, without a shadow of a doubt that, an ice age would be more detrimental than if it was just hot everywhere. Don't get me wrong, if we're going so hot that it's a desert everywhere, that would be worse. But, ice age, just about every single metric would be worse because we would lose out on food much quicker. And at the end of the day, if people lose access to food, that is going to be such a crazy culling event for the human race that the ice age definitely were teetering on that line between under the iceberg. And not a lot of people know this. We are actually destined for another iceberg. I don't remember when the next iceberg is planning to hit us. Not iceberg. Ice age was planning to hit us, but yeah, no, we've had multiple different ice age events that we are going to get another one, but the hope is that we're going to get the technology to survive it by the time it hits us. But yeah, an ice age is bound to happen. We're just kind of waiting. Solar engulfing. This one is scary because it is inevitable. So every single sun that we've ever observed has to go through this life cycle, but the problem is it's such a long time. Humanity will either leave the Earth or completely wipe themselves out before this happens. Solar engulfing is the stage of a sun where they run out of their primary fuel source, which if you don't know, suns have a fuel source, so they run through basically the entirety of the periodic table minus a few elements, and that's what changes the color of the sun, right? When we run out of a few of our fuel sources, it takes up a new one. And one of the fuel sources that it uses, it actually causes a mini combustion event where the sun actually grows, because why not? And at this current rate, if our sun were to grow by, let's just say 10%, it'll actually grow by now almost 50 to 100%. If it did that, it would kill the entirety of humanity by just engulfing the entire Earth in the sun. Would really suck because it would just be an instantaneous death, hopefully instantaneous, and it would be so quickly, it would hit us as fast as the speed of light. We would have 7 minutes of finding out about it before it hit us, which, again, is terrifying. But yes, that is solar engulfing. We are now going beneath the water in the iceberg, and we're going to start with the gamma ray burst. So, during some supernova, there's going to be, like, basically a lightsaber of gamma rays that just spear out of it. And this happens all the time in the universe, but the problem is the universe is so massive that it is actually, the equivalent of this would be like throwing a dart and you have to hit a fly out of the air, but you're completely blindfolded and you're dizzy. And that's like the gamma ray burst being pointed at Earth. It would have to perfectly hit it, even if it crossed and like let's say this is Earth. Let's say this is the gamma ray burst. If it crossed right here and completely missed us, there would be zero health effects. If it hit us though, we are so dead. Okay, like it would immediately scorch the part of the Earth that it would hit. It would poke holes in the ozone layer, destroy our atmosphere. We would lose oxygen in the air, not to mention the radiation. It would affect basically everybody on one side of the Earth with cancer, and they would instantly die. And the other would probably still have cancer, but die slowly. And then you'd have to deal with the solar storms that would, with the poking of the holes in the ozone layer, would cause UV radiation to kill everybody else. Probably the scariest of the space phenomena, but it's so incredibly unlikely. Like, you are literally throwing a dart at the wing of a fly. That is how unlikely it is. A societal collapse. Now, there's a lot of ways that these could play out, and they're going to get more in depth on what different collapse it could be. But a societal collapse. Let's just say the government Actually, let's say all major governments in the world lost power, okay? And then there was a global revolution. Like, don't get me wrong, there would be some good, but there would also be a lot of bad. Like, number one, food. We would lose a lot of food. Most people that were barely surviving would either die in the initial weeks of the collapse, or would live long enough to be the people to kill the other people in the collapse. It would be a dog-eat-dog world almost instantaneously. I think people have, like, this romanticized idea that if the entirety of society collapsed, we would, like, come together and have, like, these farming communities. Brother, it would be closer to Fallout 4 than anything else. It'd be closer to Mad Max than, like, little farming communities, okay? People would be Dog, I lost faith in humanity the moment I found out that people were impersonating as Mr. Beast just so they could get free groceries. That's when I lost faith in people. So, if a societal collapse happened, you get out of Dodge and you stay away from people as long as possible. The most terrifying thing about this is they believe it would take 21 days for the entirety of the society to collapse and all things to go into chaos, just if power went out. Yeah, that's how quickly we could go. A terror attack. Now, this one, when I read it, admittedly, I was kind of disappointed. I was like, bro, this is beneath the surface? They're like, what do you mean by that? Until you realize just, like, if a terror group was able to get their hands on, like, an engineered virus, okay? Let's say they got in a modified Ebola virus that had a 99% death rate and was immune to most forms of antibiotics and treatments. And they unleashed that in Manhattan. Even if it didn't kill everybody, the amount of people, like, if you just destroyed the entirety of New York, that would have such a detrimental effect on the global economy that everybody would get hit. If we lost New York or Tokyo, the entire world would feel it. So yeah, a terror attack, we are actually pretty susceptible to that in terms of how much it would affect us in our day-to-day life. I mean, one person did something in 2001. Now you have to get checked every single time you go on a plane. Okay? Like if somebody bought... Like, I found this out watching a different documentary. Did you know if you buy a staph infection off the dark web, you technically bought a weapon of mass destruction? Like, I'm thankful for that, and we have a whole division for people stopping people from buying a staph infection. But, like, that's to show just how easily we could get hit by something like that. That's how I think it would play out. I think the idea that they get their hands on a tactical nuke and blow it up, I actually think that would be less detrimental than they get their hands on a biological weapon. Evolution. This one's as simple as we just evolve out of humanity. Now, there's different ideas. I'll cover the next one right after this, but like, evolution just runs its course. We go into the next stage of human evolution. We really don't know what that is. Let's just say we become a human that completely loses all need for violence, and we just want to love each other every single day. That's the next stage in evolution. Because loving each other is the best case for survival for us, because we no longer really have predators. Humanity would technically go extinct because we would have to lose a lot of people to get to that point, because there wouldn't be a lot of people born. It depends on how it would play out. But let's just say that, okay? Pretty bad apocalypse, in all honesty. I think there would have to be a crazy culling event to get to that point, but pretty bad apocalypse. The Singularity, this is another version of the evolution, apocalypse theory. Evolution, apocalypse, that's a mouthful. I'm just gonna, Singularity. That's if we all mold together into basically a hive mind for the betterment of humanity. People have this idea now more than ever. If we took the entirety of human consciousness, molded that into an AI, and that's what carried on the entirety of humanity. We basically become Skynet, and all of our knowledge, our hopes, and our dreams all mold together into one entity. We basically become AI God. Also terrifying. And that would end humanity. We would lose the need for flesh and become a singularity. That's where that comes from. Some people think it's the one with space-time. I think it's far more likely one with AI. I think that's way more, in grasp. But you never know. I'm over here just pretending to be an expert. Biotech Disaster. This is what I hinted at in the terror attack version. Dude, we are working on viruses that are just, steroid-up versions of viruses that we've defeated in the past. Dog, we have a version of the bubonic plague that was, crossed with, fucking rabies that is super effective at killing people. Okay? If that got out, we're fucked. So a biotech disaster is if any of these facilities were working with something that was super dangerous, and then it evolved to jump to humans, and, we'd be dead. Again, we got a taste of this, but, this would be way worse. Yeah, a biotech disaster, definitely, this is definitely one of those ones where it's not as known, but, brother, we constantly work on biological weapons. We still do to this day. The thought of it getting out and killing a whole bunch of people, or even it being, used on an enemy, and we lose control of it, that's not crazy. The Rapture. The Rapture comes from the Catholic Christian faith and a bunch of other different denominations of the Christian faith. And it is basically when the trumpets ring and the Rapture begins, a bunch of angels and the host of heaven are going to take the good people up to heaven before the dark times come. But then there's also different beliefs on when the Rapture is going to take place. The Rapture is definitely, that's a pretty cold placement of when it's going to happen. We don't know if it comes before a certain thing or after a certain thing. There's still a lot of argument on that. But I think everybody's heard of the Rapture. All the people that are worthy of heaven during the first Rapture, both living and dead, all go up. But all the people that still need to be judged, whether they go up or go down, that leads into the tribulations. So the Rapture comes before the tribulations, and then the tribulations But yeah, we got a lot. That's a lot. So tribulations, from tribulations, we go into, I believe it was the second judgment, and then the second judgment. We're missing a lot, but we're going Rapture, tribulations, kingdom on earth, second judgment. Like, there's a lot to go through, but that's the Rapture. Simulation gets turned off. So immediately from Rapture to simulation theory, man, that's a whiplash right there. So let's just say we live in a simulation. Somebody just gets bored of the game and they turn off their PlayStation 37. And then we just all die. There's a bunch of different theories what would happen if the simulation turned off. I'm here to say, dog, I do not have enough free time in my brain to think about that. Let's just say everything fades to black, which leads into, like, you die, it goes to nothing. Which, if you think about it, wouldn't even really be the worst. It would basically just be reverting to what you were before you were born. You don't remember that. So, like, the simulation gets turned off. It's the kind of the most boring of the Doomsdays. Because I imagine we're on like a big old TV, and you click the button and everything turns off. Pretty boring. Basalt Flood. This one is pretty interesting, actually. I didn't think about this one. So we have an idea that, like, dinosaurs were wiped out by the meteorite. There was actually 7 different apocalyptic events before that, and one of those was a basalt flood. What that is basically there's so much pressure in the upper mantle of the Earth, cracks start forming in the crust of the Earth, and a bunch of molten basalt comes onto the surface, and it just destroys ecosystems. And all of the gas that is, like, causing these cracks in the earth leak into the atmosphere. And you basically get the volcanic eruption, but the volcano doesn't come from a volcano. It comes from the literal fucking earth. This was so damaging that they believe it killed around 75% of all non-avian dinosaurs, and this was considered a small one. If a large one were to go off, and to give you an idea of how big these things can get, the entirety of North America would be the size of a large basalt event. This one's admittedly not very likely. However, if it were to happen, we're just fucked. It destroys the atmosphere, it destroys the land that you're on. You can't even farm it afterwards because it just makes the entire land that it covered into basically bedrock. It's so acidic that it affects the water that it touches. Yeah, it just really sucks. Like, yeah, not good at all. The reason that it's not likely is mostly because, like, it happens few and far between, and it happened a lot more back then because the Earth was still kind of covering from, like, basically being formed. We are in a nerfed Earth. That's really you got to think about it. The dinosaurs got Earth before it got nerfed. We got the nerfed Earth. Man-made black hole. This is something that you hear about when you're 11 and then just completely forget about, but it freaks you out when you're 11. So you know those particle accelerators where we use that to figure out, like, new elements? Yeah, there's around a 0.000038% chance that it could open a black hole that kills the entirety of humanity, and it would kill it so quickly, it would legitimately be dead. Everybody's dead. Like, to give you an idea, a black hole doesn't even have to be necessarily big. You could get a black hole the size of, like, this little thing right here, and this would be enough to kill us, Mars, and almost completely destroy the sun. Like, black holes can be the size of an atom and do damage. We would need something slightly larger than that. And to give you an idea, like, the super frat bro way of describing how a black hole is made, basically when we launch these molecules, these atoms at each other, they hit each other with such great energy that it literally tears a small hole in, like, space-time, and the gravity that it all pulls in on itself creates a tiny black hole. Most of the time, these things are, like, below microscopic, and they're even smaller than most atoms. However, if they made one that was even slightly microscopic, it would kill everything, and would kill everything very quickly because of all the energy and gravity that is going to be concentrated in that little small spot. A good way of describing it is, like, you ever watch Ant-Man? Ant-Man 1, you know how he shrinks to the level of an atom? Yeah, that would actually create a small black hole because it would be all this matter compressed into a small spot. So yes, Technically, Ant-Man is the most powerful superhero ever because he can turn himself into a black hole if he's not winning a fight. Just think about that. A financial collapse. This one kind of goes into a societal collapse, but this one's very specific. Just think about, like, the American dollar used to be Actually, if we go back far enough, the American dollar was backed up by, like, furs. Well, granted, it wasn't called the American dollar, but it was backed up by furs. And then we moved to the gold standard. And then after the gold standard, we went to the petrodollar, which we had a lot of deals with the Saudi Arabia and a lot of Middle Eastern countries to basically back the American currency by the petrodollar. And that trade agreement ended. So yes, the American dollar is not backed up by anything. So that's why inflation happens very, very quickly. Aside from American might. Yes, we owe trillions of dollars to the rest of the world, but the reason that people can't collect it is because no one can take us in a 1v1. We bullied the entire world into giving us free shit, and we said we were going to pay them back, and our currency is backed by absolutely nothing. Let's say the American military fell for any reason. Every single country that uses the American dollar for anything would have a financial collapse and plunging everything into basically Mad Max. So yeah, financial collapse would be absolutely abysmal. Let's say all the world currencies collapsed. It would kind of throw us back into a dark age for a little bit. Would it kill everybody? Probably not. Yeah, it would make it... Yeah, money would mean nothing in this new world until a new currency was set up. Probably with gold. We also have... I believe we have like 10% of the world's gold reserves in like Fort Knox. Just for that reason alone. So... they believe it'll happen eventually. They're just not sure whenever the American military isn't the world superpower. Now we're going into the final tip of the iceberg. However, when I said this is part 1, I really do mean this is part 1. Because we have 8 more tiers after this going in through the depths of the ocean. This is just to give you an idea of how crazy it gets. Gray goo. So... you remember when we talk about, like, Terminator, right? And how it probably won't be like how we think about it. Gray goo goes along that same event. Imagine we made a bunch of nano-robots, okay? But these nano-robots are trained to eat a fuel source, an organic fuel source, or inorganic fuel source, take materials, and build another version of itself. And now these 2 robots each make a robot, so now we have 4 robots. And now these 4 robots each make another robot, and now you have 8 robots. And then they do it again, 16, 32, 64, and now we're getting into 128, and then we just keep on going and going and going. This gray goo is going to then start eating organic life, because that's actually what makes the gray goo the gray goo. It eats organic life as a fuel source, and then it uses resources around it to create another version of itself. And it's going to keep on replicating and replicating like a bacteria until it swallows up the entirety of Earth. All organic life dies, and it uses basically the biomass of Earth as a power source, and then uses our resources as a way of self-replicating. And that would kill absolutely everybody. This one's scary when you realize, like, they are actively trying to create robots that create another version of itself. We are off by a long way because we have to get down to the microscopic level. But that is what gray goo is, if you've ever heard that. It's basically robot pudding, and it turns us into food. Planetary Alignment. This one's probably one of the dumbest ones on here. You ever wonder, like, when you're watching, like, a movie or, like, a TV show, they'll be like, the planets have aligned, the cataclysm has begun. Yeah, that starts from, like, old ancient Roman and, like, Greek texts that, like, when Saturn... So... all of the planets are named after, like, a Greek or Roman god. Like, Jupiter, Deimos, I believe it was Deimos, Amos, it was something like that. If they all aligned, they believed it would start a cataclysm or be a bad omen. And it just kind of snuck its way into our culture. And the planetary alignment does go into another one called the Nibiru Cataclysm, which we're going to go through that because that's probably my favorite one on here because of how silly it is. But yeah, planetary alignment actually has almost nothing to do with anything. It's just superstition. Like, it's basically the, what are the name of the people? like the cosmologist version of 2012. You know the people that get way too into what your star sign is? Yeah, this is their version of 2012, and that's why I just really don't like it at all. Like, the only thing that I saw that it kind of, like, affects is gravity, but even then it's still, like, under debate how much of, like, a gravitary pull these other planets have on us, because we're just orbiting the same planet. We're not really doing anything. Impotence. I've actually already talked about this one. I didn't realize that this one wasn't that known. So, this kind of plays along with pollution. So, we've gotten to the point that men and women now are almost impotent. We have such low sperm counts. Women are having a rising number of stillborns that there's a legitimate worry that if we don't get our numbers up, we are going to have less kids than it would take to replace us. So, it's actually looking fairly likely that within the next century, unless something changes, that there is going to be a population crash. We are going to go from 10 billion people, and we're going to go down slowly, because it's going to be harder to replace people. Men are having lesser and lesser testosterone, less sperm count. It's being harder and harder for men to father children. Women are even having a harder and harder time of carrying out a full pregnancy. Like, everybody is suffering from this. And the sad part is it's happening mostly in first world countries. Yeah, I wonder what's going on. I wonder if the plastics are finally catching up with us. There's actually a part of what they think it is they think it's a phthalate, which phthalate is coming from basically plastics that we are drinking and eating. We have basically a credit card's worth of microplastics each and every single year, and they think that over generations, it's actually causing us to become more impotent. And this one's scary because it's actually pretty possible, impossible going on to likely, that humanity will actually just go out like the pandas. We will just not have children, which is terrifying. The Andromeda Galaxy. So, the Andromeda Galaxy is the closest galaxy body, like, closest to us. That's actually where we think alien life would be. And if humans were to ever go to a different galaxy, that's where we think it would be. And it's so close to us that it's actually getting closer to us. So, it's actually already going to happen. We don't know what's it's going to entail. But the Andromeda Galaxy is going to hit the Milky Way Galaxy to the point that we're actually going to pass through each other. And what the worry is that the Andromeda Galaxy, the star bodies of that, so a solar system could hit us. But not just that, the gravity of the Andromeda Galaxy might actually take Earth with it, or worse, completely destroy it. Yeah, we are gonna get hit with a fucking a whole galaxy, dude. The Andromeda Galaxy is probably going to hit us, but the good news is it's gonna be such a long time away. We're talking about tens to hundreds of millions of years away from us. This could happen. We're already gonna be dead, okay? Like that, 100 million years away, we're probably gonna be dead before that. Universal heat death. So, this is talking about how, this is a theory of how we could all go out, but it's, like, also kind of likely. You know, remember how I talked about how the sun, when it burns out of its fuel, it's gonna grow, right? Well, it's eventually gonna turn into a supernova and then explode. But, because energy has to go somewhere, or it basically turns into just about nothing, the universe could have a complete heat death. Not just could, it probably will. The universe will burn out of its own fuel and will basically just become a dead universe. Everything will be dead. There will be no suns. Everything will be cold. No atmosphere, no nothing. Everything will stop moving. Just dead in the universe. However, remember how I talked about the Andromeda the Andromeda Galaxy hitting us as like hundreds of millions of years away? We're going in like, I believe they said the soonest it could happen is like 1.6 trillion years away. Yeah, the entirety of humanity and all of our descendants would have died before that, okay? Like, I'm not worried about the universal heat death because we're so far away from it. It is like the post-credit scene. It's like worrying about the post-credit scene of a movie, that hasn't even come out yet. That is how far we are away. The big crunch. So we've heard of the Big Bang, right? That we all came from basically the size of like the head of a needle. And then that needle exploded into the universe. What the big crunch is they believe that since the universe was created in an explosion event, that we're going to all get crunched together in an implosion event. And the entirety of the universe is just a series of big bangs and big crunches. What this will do is that when the universe is finally done expanding, which we are still expanding at this very moment, we're going to turn back into that head of a pin. And yes, everything dies. We all get all the elements that we're made out of are going to get turned into that pin again, and then we're going to re-explode. And that is what the constant of what the universe is. That is what the big crunch theory is. This one again, like, you'll know it's going to happen before it actually happens, but the problem is we're still expanding and probably won't happen for another couple million years, and this is still a theory. They aren't exactly sure, but like, the Big Crunch is a proposed theory for the ending of the Big Bang. Supernova. So what the supernova thing is you know how the sun is actually growing, and when it burns out of its resources, it's going to grow? Yeah, the sun could also just explode into a supernova. However, the good news is we're about 100 million to 200 million years away from that happening. Another thing that could happen is, you know all the other suns that are around us? Yeah, those suns could also become supernovas. But here's the good news, okay? The closest sun that we've seen that is closest to becoming a supernova is around like 1 million light years away from us. And what you need to know about light years is it's actually a measure of distance. It took me forever to realize that, so I'm going to assume you're just finding that out. Whoop-de-doo. So it actually takes... The speed of light, the fastest thing that we've ever been able to observe, right? That traveling for 1 full year, that is 1 light year. 1 million light years away, it would take 1 million light years for the shock wave of that explosion to reach us. So again, so far away that it would take millions of years for it to ever happen. Thus, supernovas don't really scare me. Plus, when it ever did happen, it would kill everything. Like, whoop-de-doo. Okay. The Nibiru Cataclysm. Okay, let's actually read this one, because I could barely believe this one. So, okay, what you need to know about the Nibiru Cataclysm is there's a planet called Planet X that is on a collision course with Earth, and they were able to find that out due to the alignment of the planets, and a lady was able to find out that there was another planet that was on course to hit us, and that planet is home to the Zetans. The Zetans are an alien race that live on this planet, and they were able to speak to this lady named Nancy and tell her of the coming cataclysm. Yup, we're in that part of the iceberg. Let's actually read what Nancy has to say. The idea of the Nibiru encounter originated with Nancy Leader, a Wisconsin woman who claims that as a girl she was contacted by the gray extraterrestrials, called the Zetans, who implanted a communications device into her brain in 1995. She founded the website Zeta Talk. That is still up, by the way, and they still have meetings to disseminate her ideas. Lieber first came to public attention in the internet news groups during the build-up to the Comet Hale Bops 1997 Perihelion. Damn, what are we talking about? She stated, claiming to speak as the Zetans. So she also can get possessed by the Zetans, and the Zetans will talk to her. Basically, she's a prophet of the gray aliens, and she said that there was going to be a planet that was going to hit us called Planet X, and it's called the Nibiru Cataclysm because the planet's actually called Nibiru, and basically, she is alien Jesus, okay? That's all, like, there's nothing wrong with that. She's alien. Nancy Lieber is alien Jesus, boys. But yeah, that's the Nibiru Cataclysm. Like, it's going to get weirder and weirder as we go on, so I'm happy that this is one of the last ones, just so we can get a taste of what comes next. Now let's instantly get more depressing. The food chain collapse. So, remember I talked about the Earth has a carrying capacity? Well, that carrying capacity is going to get reached. We're going to feel that tested far before it actually happens. This one's actually far more likely. A food chain collapse. Say we expand a bit too much and we kill the mosquitoes, or we kill up animal that is detrimental to the food chain, and that inadvertently affects us. For whatever reason, I think of the Bee Movie. Remember the Bee Movie when, like, all the bees took a day off and then nothing got pollinated and then nobody could get fruits and vegetables. It's actually a super dark theme for a movie. Yeah, that could actually happen if we killed all the honeybees. We're actually looking into technology to creating artificial honeybees because we believe they're going to go extinct. Terrifying. So yeah, this could actually happen very, very soon comparative to an actual, like, population collapse. And that would affect us in many ways. I mean, brother, we're literally trying to create homemade bees because we're about to run out of bees. But think about it with literally any animal that we kill off. That could affect, like, we got lucky by killing off the animals that were kind of like the DLC animals, like the Tasmanian tiger. We killed that off. That was basically God's DLC. But yeah, food chain collapse. Actually a pretty scary concept, and that would affect the entirety of humanity, and thus leading us into basically a sort doomsday. Big Rip. So what the Big Rip is you got the Big Bang, you got the Big Crunch. The Big Rip is, imagine if I took actually, let me grab this. Okay, imagine the entirety of the universe is this ball, okay? The Big Bang happens, okay? We keep going, we keep expanding, and then finally, the Big Rip. Yeah, so what this idea is that the fabric that space and time is made out of, which we're getting into some crazy talk, the fabric of the universe will expand so fast and so quickly that it'll literally tear a hole in reality that we don't even know what it would do. This is still openly a theory, but it is a really cool one, and it's super unknown. Like, if you think of the Big Bang, I guess it kind of does make sense, but, like, kind of, really? Like, I'm saying it makes sense, but I didn't know about this one. The Big Rip would cause, they don't even know, dude. It would just cause the complete collapse of the entirety of the universe, and it would kill absolutely everything, and would maybe plunge us into another Big Bang. We don't really know, but I think the idea of the Big Rip is a pretty scary idea. A hole in space-time continuum, basically the universe being ripped like a plastic bag. Terrifying. And the last one for this video is Qiyamah. So, I'm sorry if I absolutely butcher this. Qiyamah is basically the Islam's version of the Rapture. From what I can gather, I understand there's quite a few differences, but, like, I am actually kind of surprised this one's this far down. I mean, the Rapture was just below the surface, and this is basically the Muslims' version of the Rapture, but it is the rising of the dead to, like, the living, so they can be judged. And there's 10 signs before Qiyamah happens, and I guess there's it's the same, like, energy as those YouTube videos that, like, the Nile's dried up, but it really hasn't. And that'll be the sign of, like, the coming trumpets of doom. But this one is basically the Muslims' version of that. And what you need to understand is, like, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity are all the major Abrahamic faiths. So we share a lot of ideas. I mean, Jesus is a prophet in Islam. Like, Jesus Christ is the main person in Christianity, and Jesus is kind of a figure in Judaism, kind of. So they all kind of follow the same blueprint, and that's where this came into play. So Qiyamah, the Rapture, and Judaism has their own version of it. They're all kind of the same thing, minus a few differences and a few prophecies. And that is going to be the part 1 of the Doomsday Iceberg. I just want to thank everybody who's tuned in for this much. Thank you, everybody. It means the absolute most to me. And as far as a goal, I mean, like, I have to get a few other tier lists. I would like for this one to get the 10K views, but I mean, I've learned to go into this one with 0 expectations because you guys have been doing a great job of exceeding them. Thank you, everybody, for your support, and I will see you all next time. Have a great day.